And Cloaks #1 is written by Mike Richardson with art and colors by Jordi Armengol and letters by Nate Piekos of Blandbox. And this book begins with a hostage situation at a bank when a black car comes revving in the building, and with it, a masked man dressed in black who shoots all of the robbers before jumping back into his car and riding off before anyone can ask him any questions. The tale then continues with how the vigilante quickly begun taking out various villains and even worked with the police commissioner until one day he vanished, just like Avatar: The Last Airbender. But if you couldn't tell, the story has parallels to, obviously, Batman. Well, if Batman were also partly the Punisher, as a gun-wielding maniac who just mows down all his villains. But I mean, all the contents are there. Cool car, black suit, worked with Commissioner. And in one panel, you even see him fight a villain dressed like a clown. And while these aren't necessarily bad things, it's just sometimes, characters that are derivative of other more popular characters can sometimes leave a bit to be desired in terms of originality. But I will say that opening sequence at the bank is definitely a good hook. We then cut to 25 years later, in which we meet Jake Stevens, a private investigator who was called to the estate of one Byron West, who is one of the world's most wealthiest men, with Byron's last name being an obvious nod to Adam West, the 1966 Batman. Jake is then brought inside to the study by Byron West's butler. Jake is alone for only a few moments when Byron walks in and begins telling Jake everything he knows about him, which only confuses and irritates the PI. And when I say everything, I mean everything. He's got, his parents, his birth, what happened to his dad, his relationships, the time he cheated on his girlfriend. With the extensive research that this guy has done into Jake, I wouldn't be surprised if he knew the last time the guy rubbed one out. It's then Byron makes him an offer, which is to use whatever methods necessary to track down and discover the identity of the vigilante, offering him thousands of dollars, to which Jake can't say no. He agrees to the terms, even though he thinks it's a waste of time, and heads down to the police station to speak to a woman by the name of Detective Gale, whom he knows quite intimately. And by that I mean this is the woman that he cheated on his girlfriend with, so yeah, it's, probably a little awkward. And although she is unhappy to see him, she still greets him, to which he then inquires her for a favor about any files or information she has on the vigilante, which she obliges under the condition that he is to never return to see her. She then gives him a file about the vigilante's sidekick, Dickie Johnson. I guess it could be a Batman reference, Robin, Dick Grayson, Dickie Johnson. The next day, Jake goes over to Dickie's house, where the man lays out everything he knows about the vigilante, primarily that most of their exploits were made up, and in fact, he only worked with him a handful of times. He then recounts a time that the vigilante picked him up and had him walk into a warehouse where he had a gun shoved in his face, which distracted the criminals long enough for the vigilante to crash in and kill them all. And then afterwards, he got dropped off, and that was the end. So unlike Batman, who actually kept his Robins around and trained them and stuff like that, this vigilante was more like, I'm gonna pick up a random kid off the street, shove him in a costume, and then thrust him into various dangerous situations unprepared, which may result in the child's death. Definitely some good commentary on involving a young minor in your crime-fighting exploits. We then cut to hours later when Jake rolls up to his house with his girlfriend angrily telling him that Gale had been blowing up her phone, and then says he is sleeping on the couch. Jake returns Gale's call only to get questions from her, because sometime after he left Dickie, the former vigilante sidekick was found shot to death. Well, I'm sure that's gonna put, maybe a small hiccup in his investigation, because, now he's placed near the scene of a crime, having most likely been the last person to talk to Dickie before he was shot. But now the question is, who could have perpetrated the act? And at the end of this, I'll say, I liked it. Obviously, the story is meant to be a deconstruction of the Batman archetype and kind of show that, beneath that general public perception of the guy, that more than likely he was extremely reckless and did not care for the welfare of children whatsoever. And even in fact, when you think about things like that, Dickie, for all he knew, may not have been the first sidekick and may not have been the last up to the time he disappeared. in which who knows how many kids may have been killed in the line of fire. And as far as the writing goes, yeah, it's got this very interesting detective noir mystery kind of concept going on, and yeah, there's enough there for me to latch onto and enjoy. Characters seem flawed, but relatable, and I think it's very apparent that the PI will undergo one of the most difficult, if not the most insane detective trip of his life, one that will test his very moral fiber and potentially change him at his very core. I mean, if I had to guess what's probably going to happen here is that Byron West is the vigilante, and maybe he sees something in Jake as a potential worthy successor, and he's just sending him through a battery of tests to try to solve the mystery and all that, at which point Jake may take over as the new vigilante. However, with subversions of stories like this, I can't say that for certain, and in fact, Byron West himself may be more of a red herring than anything else. And effectively, the book is trying to get us to look over here at all the similarities while the real story is operating over here. When it comes to the art, it's got this very interesting pulp style about it, which may be a bit of an acquired taste, as a lot of the characters feature, a lot of like heavy shadows and lining. So much to the point that more or less in this book, eyes aren't even part of the equation. It's just blackness where all of the eyes are, which combined with some of the weird facial expressions of how certain characters are drawn from time to time, it's a little weird to look at, I'll be honest. But I also think it fits the tone of the book overall, and I turned each page with interest. It's a pretty effective first issue, and I think it's worth checking out. And with that, I'm going to give Cloaked issue number 1 an 8.5 out of 10. And I'll definitely be checking out issue number 2, because I would like to know why this supposed hero of the people did end up disappearing. So Cloaked, issue number 1. What did you think about this book if you've read it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you like this video, I'd love it if you smash that like button, share it with some friends, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and ring that notification bell for more comic book content. And if you're wondering what to watch next, consider one of these 2 videos. Alright, take care, have a great day, and as always, stay geeky.